AYIN. Okay. So in the middle of the top section on page Kuf Chav Zayin. And here we're finally coming to, so to speak, the full explanation of what the Gemara says. The Pasuk says, "V'ato Yisrael ma Hashem l'kech Hashem imach." Moshe Rabbeinu says to thee, what is the Rebbe requesting of you? But Yira. And the Gemara asks, is Yira such an easy thing to attain? The Gemara answers, from Moshe's perspective, yes. So what kind of answer is this? We're talking about every Yid. So the explanation is that the Inyan of Yira is he didn't have beetle, and this beetle is inherent in every neshama, in every Jewish neshama. So at Etzem neshama there's this beetle. Ahava is more difficult to attain because Ahava requires his bonus in the lakus. Whereas Yira is something which is a direct expression of the neshama is Yiras Hashem. So let's start just a few lines down. The line begins with chilukei madreges, about 7 or 8 lines from the beginning. That in Ahava there is chilukei madreges because it depends on the hasogel, on the seichel, to what extent one is able to understand, to what extent one has the power of his bonus. Aval Yira, towards the end of that line, Aval Yira, but Yira, this is all to explain why is Yira such an easy thing to attain? That's the implication of the Pasuk. Shezehu mikoyecho atzmi shebenefesh. Yira is a direct flow, a direct expression of the koyecho atzmi, of the essential koyach in the nefesh. What is the essential koyach in this word? I mean, the principle of etzem we discussed several times. And essentially, in a brief, etzem is that which is given from above. Let me elaborate on this slightly. You understand where the term etzem comes from. If a person plans to have a home, the home is not there yet. There's not even a place for it. But in his mind, he projects to have a home. This projection of the home, what is it based on? And I said he doesn't even have the location. Certainly not the finances, well, not the means or wherewithal to create this home. And yet he projects to have a home. Where does this home come from? On what basis is it being projected? And the answer is that this projection is reflecting the reality of the human presence in the world. This reality is not due to his experience in the world. not due to his accomplishments. This is the reality with which the Creator created him. Again, let's step back a second. The Creator with which you created him. How do we know that? How do we identify it? And then step back. The Creator creates everything in wholesome measure. When God creates, He creates a wholesome creature, not a half-messed creature. Like we always point out, that which God creates lasts forever. It recreates, reproduces, rejuvenates every session, every season. It's a real creation. It's a God-like presence. Doesn't dissipate by use and by time and so forth. A tree, yet it rains down and it comes winter, and in the spring it rejuvenates, because it's a real divine creation. This is called etzem. Something that has an essential presence. Its presence is not due to its tangibility, to its observability, to its experience. It's due to the reality, to the divine truth that was identified with it. This means etzem. It's an essential presence. It cannot be dissipated. It cannot be destroyed. Because it has an essential presence. On its lower level, on the simplest level, on the human level, I always point out like this. You have a table in your dining room. This table is made of wood and built by a carpenter. And as such, inevitably there is some precarious stage. It's put together. Anything that's put together, it could fall apart. What happens if this table actually does fall apart? This table standing in your dining room. Is the table in your dining room dependent on this physical table lasting? The answer is absolutely not. The table in the dining room is that which is a human perception, value. And if this dining room table is going to break, another one is going to come in its place. Without a doubt. Because this table represents an essential element, a human element. And thus, it lasts, so to speak, indefinitely. That was etzem. A yiro has an etzem presence in the neshama of AYIN. Because the Creator, the REBBE, this is the neshama representing the REBBE, neshama lekis. This neshama lekis has an essential connection to Elokus, and this essential connection at the fundamental level represents its beetle to Elokus. Beetle to Elokus means it only recognizes the reality of Elokus. But that reality it recognizes to the fullest. It doesn't need to be convinced. It doesn't need to find it. This is reality. This is its reality. Having said that, I'll take a step to the side a little bit and speak for a moment about Elokus. Because the Rebbe mentions over here that you have to be mizboinen in the inyan aliki. What is aliki? In extreme brevity. everything in our world, like we say, the carpenter builds a table. The truth is the carpenter does not build a table. The carpenter puts together pieces of wood in a certain form. The table materializes as a result. You can't build a table. You put things together and it resembles a table. At least in your mind it resembles a table. Who can create directly that which he wants to create? He wants to create a house, he creates a house. He wants to create a table, he creates a table. He wants to create a human being, he creates a human being. Not piecemeal, but directly, dynamically, the reality itself that he wants to create. This is only within the divine purview. The divine sees things, creates the reality itself directly. This means Holocaust, at least from our meager perception. So one should be mizboinen Holocaust. What does that mean? He's mizboinen in the reality, in the totality, and in the profound reality of Holocaust. Everything that's coming from Holocaust is coming in its dynamic and full form. So, okay, let's. So for his boinonis, you need kelim. You need various kelim. Mashenkin habitul mitzadetzam hanshama. The beetle, however, is mitzadetzam hanshama is due, and it is there because of etzam hanshama. Why is it etzam hanshama? Why is it in etzam hanshama there's a beetle? Because etzam hanshama, this is the elokus in the neshama. Because the neshama is a divine reality. And therefore there is the bitul. Bitul means it only wants to be connected to the elokus. Not wants to. That is what it is. So therefore, habitul mitzatem hanshama harei ze benokil yesed. That to attain bitul, which is the yira in attain bitul, is much easier, because you don't have to resort to your intellectual capability and so forth. It goes directly from what the neshama is. Recognizing the truth as the neshama sees it, it has already din habitul. Thus, this explains what the Chazon say. Milsa zutrasi. That here is milsa zutrasi. Is a small thing. Actually, milsa zutrasi is an expression in the Gemara with a question mark. The Gemara says, Moshe Rabbeinu says, Moash, why is Hashem asking of you but here? The Gemara says, is that such a small request? Is that an easy thing to attain? So he says, yes, it is an easy thing. The be'emes, because in truth, who came b'chol Yisrael, because in truth, this is true in every Yid, the Inyan from Yira, inherent, in its essence. V'omru, and that's a Chacham, the Gemara answers, in yes, legabe Moshe from the perspective of the challenges of Moshe, shuhu b'chim zadas b'cholecha v'echem Yisrael, which is the das element in every Yid. So the Moshe element in every neshama is the das, and from that perspective, yes, yira is an easy thing to attain. Now that we mentioned this, let me discuss das for a moment. There's chokhmah, there's bina, and there's das. Chochmah and Bina, Chochmah and Bina Das are, all three of them are intellectual qualities. There's a fundamental difference between Chochmah and Bina and Das. Chochmah, you say Chochmah is like sight. Even though sight is such a simple and straightforward aspect in action, you don't even have to do anything. You see what is being shown to you. So you directly relate to the truth. Nonetheless, there is this element in Chochmah, sight. I always point out sight. Yes, it's very easier to attend, but you have to keep your eyes open. If you close your eyes, you don't see. In other words, Chochmah is an inherent Indian that the neshama sees, but he has to look to see. Bina is further a personal experience. Then there is Das. Das is the last of the three qualities. The word Das means knowledge. What does knowledge mean? Please understand. Let's think for a second. If knowledge is constantly substantiated by the logic that created it, so it's not knowledge. It's constantly precarious, constantly being questioned, constantly being doubted, and you answer, yes, I have proof for it. If knowledge is based on proof, it's not Das. There's no fundamental reality to it. What then is Das? Das is really a level in the intellect, in the human intellect, where all the intellectual perceptions come to the point where they become real. Das, I really know them, become real. This means Das. This Das is not a natural, an essential presence in the neshama. This is a different kind of, different level of a gift. This is Moshe Rabbeinu's contribution to every neshama. Here's a Das. We said the other day that in Seichel, there are many madrigas in Seichel, even in our own experience. Then there is what we call this makes sense. And we explained, makes sense does not mean because I'm thinking of how it makes sense, I can prove it. Makes sense is not proof. Makes sense, it makes sense to my intellect directly. So this is both. On the one hand, it's intellectual perception, recognition. On the other hand, it makes sense. My intellect, as it is inherent in my neshama, this makes sense.
That's a feature of Das, this making
Yeah,
sense.
that's a feature of Das.
By Chochmah you don't have that element.
No. Chochmah, you have to explain why.
Really?
What do you see?
Chochmah thought seeing, not explanation.
That's right. But he sees, and because he sees, that's why it's right.
Oh.
Let me further elaborate on this a little bit. You enter this room. This room is 4 walls, but these 4 walls are not bare walls. You have tables, tables along this wall, tables along the middle, and tables along the wall. When you enter this room, you have to contemplate which way, what will allow you. If I want to go to the other side of the room, you have to contemplate how I'm going to get it, and I should not push the tables, and I should go the opening that is prepared for the passage. Only an idiot has to contemplate it. This is obvious to every human being. And this space between these rows of tables is a pathway to pass through this room.
And that obviousness indicates das?
Right.
Because it's obvious that shows on das.
This is a sense of reality. This is not a process, a procedural type of recognition. This table must be this. This is, he sees the reality of this room. This room is a real room, human room, and it was designed on human principles, and therefore this is he sees it right away, the whole thing.
Seemingly that would fit with Chokhmah as well, the perception of Chokhmah.
Everything. Okay. This is the Da, this is the reality. This room was contemplated by Chokhmah and Bina. Ultimately, he is the reality of it.
Okay.
This is what we call, Johnny, it makes sense. Making sense does not mean make sense by some procedural manner, but it is a representative of a correct human setup. So this is the Das element. This Das element, to know godliness in this manner. This is a Moshe Rabbeinu's contribution to every Jewish neshama. To recognize that there is godliness, that godliness is what actually permeates the entire existence. This is Das. And Lagabi Das, Lagabi this perception, this recognition, that godliness is what really buttresses the reality of the whole world, from that perspective, Yira is a small thing. Because godliness is present everywhere. Not only present everywhere, that is the whole presence. According to this, it comes out that this Yira is a small thing only because we have the Moshe Rabbeinu element in us. Not because of, not as a Yid is unto himself, but because of Moshe Rabbeinu's special contribution. For this the Rebbe says, Avo be'emes, at the end of the line that begins with what Moshe. Avo be'emes, however, in truth, so the Gemara says, like Moshe Rabbeinu is one who enables and facilitates this union, that it should be, Yira should be an easy thing. Avo be'emes, but in actual truth, b'nokel, it is easy, l'kol echad v'yechad. It is easy to every individual person. Not just based on the contribution of Das of Moshe Rabbeinu, but mitzad every Yid, mitzad the structure, the essence of the neshama itself, of every Yid, as it is rooted in Lakus directly. It is easy, it is easy for every individual person Yid to come to this.
Come to what?
To this Yid. Because this year is based and is rooted in the beetle mitzad etzem hanshama. The beetle mitzad etzem hanshama. What is the beetle mitzad? The etzem hanshama has this sense, this beetle to alakus. Because of the essence, because of the truth of alakus in the neshama. Therefore, it is easy to attain. Not only because of the contribution of Moshe Rabbeinu, but it is easy for every neshama mitzad etzem. V'hoyikor, however, the most important prerequisite and precondition for this, even though this is true in every neshama, this mitzad neshama as it is purely in its purity. However, there's a principle here. The principle is who it is when there would not be al-kolponi, means at the minimum he is gabrus achumris beyoser. That the chumris should not be overpowering in a person's life. If the chumrius means the pursuit of personal experience, of worldly experience, worldly satisfaction, that's a chumrius.
Should not be the ikar.
Huh?
Should not be the ikar.
No,
Should not be ikri.
The ikar.
no.
Should not.
No.
That's not what he said.
No, please.
That's what you just said.
No, I don't say. The principle in this is that there should not be his gabrus achumris. This is a prerequisite. It's told that there should be this plain forward Indian, the etzem molecules, the etzem, the Indian from Yira, that it should come easy is as long as there is not. This is the principle that allows it to be. As long as there's not his gabrus achumris.
And that reflects
Yeah.
Yeah. You said something added. You added something.
I did not add anything. This is
No, but you said certain.
the ho'iker. In other words, the most important prerequisite in this is that there should not be prerequisite. Prerequisite does not mean this makes it. What makes it is because the neshama has yira. But to safeguard this yira, he should not be contaminated. Should not be lost. You need this, that it should not be as gabas achumris.
But you mentioned something by personal.
It's a chumrius. Chumrius is when a person becomes focused on personal experience, on physical experience. Chumrius. That conceals the yira. This etzem yira.
That could contaminate the
Yeah,
ear.
that's right. Contaminate the etzem, the essential truth in neshama.
Right. Okay.
In other words, every neshama, besides the addition, besides the contribution of Moshe Rabbeinu of Das, which is a special gift, besides the neshama itself on the simplest level, it recognizes Elokus and it has Yiras Hashem. Because the truth of the neshama itself. As long as he safeguarded against his gabrus achumris b'yoser. Let's look at these words. The principle, most important principle in this is to safeguard is that there should not be his gabrus achumris b'yoser. This is not an excessive his gabrus achumris. A little bit interest in physicality is not going to disturb the singer. But if it is b'yoser, if this gabrus achumris becomes overwhelming, that becomes focused, that becomes his pursuit, his interest, then that can shemalim al hakeho atzmi. That conceals koyecho atzmi. It can conceal even in the koyecho atzmi. Atzmi means the essential, that which is the neshama is made of. That which the neshama expresses itself. That can be concealed, not eliminated, but it became covered up, but you're not conscious of it because you're so preoccupied with chumrius and you don't sense the neshama element. Or Kamai, for example, Prikasoy Rachmon Litzlan. Prikasoy. That's one of the first steps of chumrius. Prikasoy means removing of the yoke, of the desire of the person in the world.
No, pre-concern, what's the word?
Prikas oil, poirek oil.
Prikat oil, okay.
This is the first step in the chumrius. You're given life. You're given a divine world. The world begins to bore at you, and you want to be independent of everything. A mitzvah unto yourself. Why need to be independent of the world? You're created. You're a wonderful creation. You're being supported from all over the place. Why do you seek to be independent on your own? That's a precursor. I don't want anything above anything. Give me direction how I should act. This precursor is the first step in the chumriyus. Why? Because it's the first step one begins to recognize his own mitzvahs. Normally, a person is recognizing the divine truth in the world. But there is a whole world. But he sees in front of his eyes. When he begins to focus on his own mitzvahs, he says, no, I want to know things independently. All of the things independently means, oh yeah, I was taught in Cheder that Aleph is an Aleph, but I want to know it on my own. Give you a wild example. You can project how this thing it expands itself in many, many ways and in many directions. Rahman al-Islam, the Rebbe said, precursor Rahman al-Islam. Rahman al-Islam, Hashem should save us from this precursor. To have a tendency of removing of the yoke. I don't want a yoke. I want to be my own man, standing my own 2 feet. Ukahagavna and such other humorous attitude. So the Rebbe explains, as long as there is not his gavras or humorous b'yoyser, it is perfectly wholesome for the neshama to have the union from Yira Shemayim.
It is perfectly wholesome for a person to what?
To have Yira Shemayim.
That's the goal.
No, that's a natural thing.
That's the natural thing.
Right. That's a natural thing. This is the etzem of Yiras Hashem.
Okay, and what was the connection with Prikas Ol or Chumrius?
Prikas Ol is the Chumrius that can cover up this natural this perception.
Right.
That's it.
And how does that connect with having a limited amount of Chumrius? You said
it depends to what extent. The person wants Prikas Ol. He wants 100% freedom or just a little bit.
A little bit of wanting freedom is okay.
Not okay. It will not cover. It will not cover up his.
It will cover up his year Shemayim.
That's right. All right. So we went through this, and I guess we will stop here. Now we're going into Meir Brochis. Not the next step.